Here to shed more light on what's at stake is strategist Calvin Dark. But Calvin, before we chat, here's what one Muslim leader had to say at a press conference in Michigan.
By Arizona, Biden only won by 10,500 votes. And the U.S. Policy of Immigration Center at UC San Diego, as well as CARE Arizona, is studying the estimate that there are over 25,000 Muslim voters in the state of Arizona. And I will work day and night to ensure that those voters abandon Biden this election, and that we can guarantee that Arizona will not stand with a man who has tainted the blue wave with red dots of blood.
Calvin, how likely is it that these Muslim leaders will be able to influence large enough groups of constituents to ultimately pull their vote for President Biden?
Well, if I was on the Biden campaign, I would hope that it would be not very likely. But the reality is, it is something that the Biden campaign should take seriously. Because what we have to remember is we're not talking about huge numbers. In many of these states, particularly in Michigan, I was recently in Dearborn, Michigan, where there's a large Arab American community that has tended to vote Democrat in past elections. If just a small percentage of them stay home, that could really affect the score and the vote with Biden. Because we have to remember, too, as the speaker was saying, it's not necessarily that Arab Americans believe the alternative will be any better, because if it is likely Trump, his policies, I don't think, would be any better as far as what they would want. But the thing is, a vote away from Biden is effectively a vote for Trump or whoever the Republican nominee is.
Calvin, what do you think about this tactic? Does it have the teeth it needs to sway the president? And how might the president respond, if he responds at all?
Well, I think what Biden has to do are two very, very important things. The first thing, he's got to hammer home the reminder that Trump, the likely Republican nominee, his policies are a lot worse for what Arab Americans care about. You know, let's think about at the beginning of the conflict between Israel and Hamas, he said that he would, if he was president, would ban Gazan refugees from the United States. So Biden really needs to make that distinction clear. But the second thing he has to do is he has to go further than that by saying, what will he do to gain back the support of the Arab American community? What can he do to show a real commitment to the principle that innocent Palestinians should no longer pay the price that Hamas should be paying? Now, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, Biden has done a better job at expressing that in speeches, but I think what the Arab American community is looking for is, will he back it up with words? Will he back it up with actions? Will he use the full influence and power of the United States to really put that behind his commitment for human rights protections for the Palestinians?
Let's expand on this a little more. Can you put into perspective just how large of a role swing states play in presidential elections? We know it's make or break often, when votes are so close, but dig a little deeper for us.
Yes, and it's not only just the swing states. Depending on who you're asking, it's anywhere between 5 and 9 states where the presidency will depend on those states. But we've seen in recent elections, not just those states, but the numbers in those states. We're seeing that the difference between Biden and Trump, for example, in 2020, was in the single digits in some of these states. And so that is why Biden and the Republicans have to really think about the polling we're seeing now, because slight changes among key groups could really change the outcome for the whole country, not just for that state.
Calvin, the White House has shown unwavering support for Israel throughout the war. How does the president win some of these voters back?
Well, what he's got to do is he's got to, first of all, make clear that after this conflict is over, the United States is not only committed to a resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a two-state solution, but it is willing to redouble its efforts in ways that it wasn't before October 7th. And he has to really take seriously not just members of the Arab American communities, that are protesting, but Muslim and Arab members of Congress who have asked for a ceasefire, who have asked for Biden to insist with more pressure that the Israeli government consider the plight of Palestinian civilians as they go to defeat Hamas.
Political analyst and strategist Calvin Dark. Calvin, thanks so much for your time tonight and your insight. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So